Hello fellow smokers. Today we're looking at pulled pork and dill pickle pizza. Starting off, we're going to look at what it takes to make the crust. I will have the full recipe down in the comments below. But what you're looking at is 1 1/3 cups of warm water, and make sure that it is warm, somewhere between 100 and 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Then you're going to add 1 tablespoon of granulated sugar. And to that you're going to add 2 1/4 teaspoons of platinum yeast from Red Star Instant Yeast. I believe that's the same equivalent as one of their standard packets. So put that together in a bowl and stir it up and let it set for a few minutes, and the yeast will begin to activate. Now you're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 1 teaspoon of salt to that mixture. Then you're going to add 3 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour. And once you've added the flour, mix everything well with a wooden spoon for a minute or two. Take a little bit of flour, throw it out on your work surface, and pull the dough out and knead it well. As you can see, folding the dough over and then kneading it back into itself. And do this for probably about 3 or 4 minutes. And once you've kneaded the dough for 4 or 5 minutes, press your fingers into the dough a little bit, and if it slowly bounces back, your dough is ready to rise. If not, you want to keep kneading. Then put some olive oil in your pan and coat it all around the sides. If your dough is ready, place it in the pan and get it coated all the way around with the olive oil. Once it's coated with the olive oil, grab some saran wrap and cover the dough that's in the bowl, and you want to put it into a warm place to rest. Best is to heat your oven up to 150 degrees and then turn it off. Then you can turn the light on in the oven as well, which will keep some heat going. Leave the pizza dough in there for 60 to 90 minutes, and you want to see the dough double in size. Now we're going to switch over to the ingredient side. First we have green onion, which I have 4 or 5 green onions there, and I'm going to only use the chive end, which is the dark green side, not the white onion part. And I'm going to chop those into about 1/4 inch cuts or 1/4 inch circles. And I would say I have somewhere between about 1/3 and 1/4 cup there. Then I have 2 jalapenos. Now what I'm doing with the jalapenos is slicing them in half and removing the whites. The whites are where the heat is, and my wife does not prefer too much heat, so I take the whites out. If you want, you can simply cut them as pinwheels and leave the whites inside of there for some extra heat. The next ingredient is cherry tomatoes. Somewhere around 12 to 15 cherry tomatoes, and you just want to cut those in half. The next ingredient we have is red onion. I would say probably the equivalent of about 1/4 of an onion. As you can see, I have a half onion there, but I cut some of it away and store it for later in the fridge. But I want to do a pretty fine chop on that, so good fine chop on about 1/4 cup of onion. Then the last ingredient is the dill pickle. I have some delicious, authentic kosher dill chips here, and I'm going to take those and put them on some paper towel. Put a paper towel on top and bottom and try to get quite a bit of the brine off. My fear is that if I don't get too much of the brine off, I'm going to end up with a soggy pizza. So I chop them into strips. You can put them on whole if you like, and of course you can use any type of pickle you choose. Then I put them back on paper towel and get more of the moisture off just to make sure that my pizza is not too wet. The sauce I'm using is the sauce I use for my ribs and pork butt. It's called The Sauce, and the recipe is on my website. As you can see, the dough has doubled in size, maybe even a little bit more, and Tracy is pressing it down, pulling it out of the pan, and she's going to end up kneading it some more. She's cutting it in half, as I said, so that she can freeze half of it. So half goes into a Ziploc bag, which goes into the freezer. It can stay in the freezer for months and will stay good. Matter of fact, we made a pizza the day before from a dough that she had frozen about 7 months earlier, and it turned out excellent. So half goes into a Ziploc and into the freezer, and the other half goes into a bowl and gets covered with saran wrap, and it's going to go into the fridge and rise again for about 10 or 15 minutes. After removing the dough from the fridge, after maybe about 15 or 20 minutes, you can see that the dough has basically doubled in size. Tracy's going to throw a little bit more flour out on the counter and then begin the process of flattening the dough out to make it into the crust. You want to end up with a dough crust that's maybe about somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch thick. Tracy then puts cornmeal on the bake sheet. The pan that we use is a perforated pizza pan. Helps to transfer the heat to the crust and give you a crispier crust. Once she puts the dough on the pan, she spreads it out, but not really creating the edge crust yet. You want to let it set for about 2 to 3 minutes and then come back to it and create the edge, which will help to keep your ingredients on the pizza. To prevent the fillings from making the pizza dough soggy, you can either spray or coat lightly with a bit of olive oil. Once the dough is ready to go, it's now time to put on the toppings. The first thing I put on is barbecue sauce. So I put it in a circle. You can brush it on, whatever method you choose to use, but I would say probably the equivalent of maybe a 1/4 cup or so of sauce. There's not a huge amount of sauce that I put on there. After putting the sauce on the pizza dough, I put the pulled pork on. I'm using 3/4 of a pound of pulled pork here. I wouldn't want to use any more than that. Might cut it back to about a 1/2 pound, but either way you're going to get a great pork flavor. For the rest of the ingredients, some I'm going to put underneath the cheese and some on top of the cheese. Of course, this is a pulled pork and dill pickle pizza, so I really want to taste the dill pickles in the pizza. So I put the red onion, the jalapeno, and the chopped green onion all underneath. The cheeses that I use are both from Aldi. The first is an Italian style. It's a blend of mozzarella, provolone, romano, parmesan, and asiago. And then I put on the dill pickles, and the other cheese that I use is a triple cheddar. It's a Wisconsin, New York, and Vermont sharp cheddar shredded cheese, also from Aldi's. Then I put on the cherry tomatoes, and although I don't show it on camera here, I do put an equal amount of sauce on the top of the pizza in the same way, just doing a circle around the pizza. From there it goes into the oven, 475 degrees for 15 minutes. And when I pull it out, I'm going to let you hear the actual sound coming from this pizza when I cut it up. The crust turns out very crispy and very delicious. The recipe and recipe links are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and leave your comments and questions below.